What if I told you that hidden within the rolling green hills of Europe lies a story older than the pyramids of Egypt? A story of people who whispered to the wind, carved secrets into stone, and believed that the stars themselves guided their destiny. Imagine a time before kingdoms and empires, when tribes lived in harmony with forests, rivers, and mountains, yet carried with them knowledge so mysterious that even today, archaeologists and historians argue over how much they truly understood. These were the Celts, and their world was unlike anything you could ever imagine. The Celts were not a single nation but a collection of tribes spread across Europe, from Ireland and Britain to France, Spain, and beyond. They left no great written chronicles of their own, but they left legends, ruins, symbols, and whispers carried down through the centuries. And in the heart of their culture stood the Druids, priests, philosophers, healers, and mystics. To the Celts, the Druids were the bridge between the human world and the realm of gods and spirits. They were said to read the language of trees, to interpret omens in the flight of birds, and to remember the oral histories of generations. The Romans, who eventually fought the Celts, were fascinated and terrified by them, describing their ceremonies in oak groves, their use of mistletoe as sacred medicine, and their strange rituals under the light of the moon. But one place above all others became linked with Celtic mysticism in the imagination of the world: Stonehenge. The massive stone circle on the Salisbury Plain in England has stood for over 4,000 years. Enormous stones, some weighing up to 25 tons, dragged from miles away, positioned with astronomical precision, so that the rising and setting of the sun during solstices align perfectly with the monument. How did ancient people without wheels, cranes, or modern engineering create such a structure? To this day, no one knows for sure. While archaeologists say Stonehenge was built long before the Druids, popular imagination tied them together. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Romantic writers began to claim that Druids had built Stonehenge as their temple of worship. The image was irresistible. Robed priests chanting incantations, the midsummer sun casting shadows through the towering stones, secrets of the universe being whispered into human ears. It is here, in this mystical landscape, that another legend begins to intertwine: the legend of King Arthur. Arthur, the once and future king, the leader destined to rise when Britain needs him most, has his roots buried deep in Celtic myth. His knights, his sword Excalibur, the wizard Merlin. These are stories that echo with themes drawn from Druidic wisdom and Celtic lore. Some say Merlin himself was a Druid, a guardian of the old ways, who used his knowledge of nature, stars, and spirits to guide Arthur and shape the destiny of a kingdom. And here's where the American fascination comes in. Across the ocean, in a country far removed from the misty fields of Britain, people fell in love with the idea of the Celtic past. In American culture, the Celts, Druids, Stonehenge, and Arthurian legends are not just history, they are magic. From fantasy novels and Hollywood films to music festivals and spiritual movements, these old European myths have been reshaped into something vibrant and mystical, often portrayed as keys to ancient wisdom lost to modern society. Americans love to imagine that Druids knew secrets about energy, ley lines, or connections to other worlds. They see Stonehenge not just as a ruin, but as a portal, a calendar of the cosmos, or even a beacon for alien visitors. And Arthur? He becomes more than just a British king. He is transformed into a universal symbol of courage, destiny, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. Yet behind all the myths and legends lies something very real. The Celts truly existed, and their culture influenced Europe in profound ways. The Druids did serve as spiritual leaders and keepers of tradition. Stonehenge really does align with the sun, showing that ancient people had advanced astronomical knowledge. And Arthur, well, he may have been inspired by a real warrior who defended Britain in the chaotic years after the Roman Empire collapsed. The line between truth and legend is thin, and that is exactly why these stories captivate us. They are part history, part mystery, and part dream. As we walk deeper into the story of the Celts, Druids, and Arthur, we will uncover how myths are born, how they survive, and why they continue to hold such power. Because perhaps, just perhaps, the ancients left us more than ruins and stories. They left us a map to understanding who we are, and who we might become. And maybe that's why, even now, under the wide sky of America, people look back across the Atlantic, to the misty fields of Britain, to the shadows of Stonehenge and wonder, what secrets are still hidden there waiting to be revealed? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing in a forest at midnight, 2,000 years ago. The air is cool and heavy with the scent of oak and pine. Torches flicker, casting dancing shadows on the trunks of ancient trees. Around you, robed figures move silently, their faces hidden by hoods. They chant in a language lost to time, invoking powers unseen, calling upon gods whose names are barely remembered. These are the Druids, and in the imagination of centuries, their rituals have become the stuff of myth. Though history left us few details, legends grew like wild vines. The Druids, people say, could see the future in pools of water, hear the voices of the dead in the rustle of leaves, and summon storms with whispered incantations. To them, the natural world was alive with spirit. Every tree had a soul, every river carried wisdom, every stone held memory. In Celtic myth, the world was never divided between the ordinary and the supernatural. They were interwoven. Heroes might cross into the other world simply by stepping through a mist. A bard's song could charm warriors into peace or drive them into frenzy. And hidden in these tales are the seeds of the Arthurian cycle. Consider Merlin, the enigmatic wizard of King Arthur's legend. In medieval stories, he is half man, half mystical being, born with the power of prophecy. But peel back the layers and what do we find? A figure who echoes the role of a druid, a keeper of secrets, an advisor, a man who walks between worlds. In some versions, Merlin speaks with animals, communes with the elements, and shapes the fate of kings, all of which mirror ancient Druidic lore. Then there is the sword Excalibur, set to shine with the light not of this earth. In many versions of the legend, it is not just a weapon but a symbol, a sacred gift, bestowed by the Lady of the Lake. She is no ordinary figure either. She is a remnant of Celtic goddesses tied to water, fertility, and sovereignty. The idea that a king's power must be given by the land itself, through a divine or mystical force, is pure Celtic tradition. The myths grow deeper still with Avalon, the island shrouded in mist where Arthur's body was taken after his final battle. Some say Avalon was a paradise, a land where apples bloomed eternally, where wounds healed and souls found peace. To scholars, Avalon is a reflection of the Celtic otherworld, a realm beyond death where heroes rested, but never truly vanished. That is why Arthur is not simply a king who died. He is the once and future king, destined to return in Britain's hour of need. This belief that a great leader never truly leaves but will rise again echoes ancient Celtic cycles of death and rebirth, tied to nature itself. But the legends are not just about kings and wizards. Celtic myth is filled with stories of magical creatures, enchanted objects, and daring quests. The Tuatha De Danann, a race of godlike beings, were said to live in hidden realms beneath hills and lakes. They wielded treasures of unimaginable power, a cauldron that never ran empty, a spear that never missed its mark, a sword that always struck true. When Christianity spread through Europe, these beings did not vanish, they transformed. Fairies, elves, and other mystical creatures of European folklore owe their roots to these Celtic deities. And then there is the tale of the Green Man, the wild spirit of nature, often carved into old churches and cathedrals. His face is hidden in leaves, his eyes alive with mystery. To many, he represents the eternal cycle of growth, decay, and rebirth. In Arthurian stories, echoes of this figure appear in the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, where a mysterious, otherworldly challenger tests the honor and courage of Arthur's knights. In American culture today, these legends are reimagined again and again, woven into fantasy films, novels, and even video games. The Druids become guardians of hidden wisdom, Merlin becomes the archetype of the wise old mentor, and Arthur's knights embody the eternal quest for justice and truth. Why does it resonate so strongly? Perhaps because these myths speak to something universal. They tell us that the world is more mysterious than it seems, that heroes rise when hope fades, and that the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural are thinner than we dare to believe. Think of it. Stonehenge standing in silence as the midsummer sun breaks the horizon, light pouring through the ancient stones. Was it a temple? A calendar? A doorway to another world? We may never know the truth, but the mystery itself is what keeps the story alive. Because in every age, people need myths. They are not just old tales, they are mirrors reflecting our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. And the Celts, Druids, and Arthur gave the world myths so powerful that even thousands of years later, they still burn bright in our imagination. But what if these myths are more than just stories? What if, hidden beneath the poetry and legend, there are fragments of real knowledge, clues left behind by a people who saw the world differently than we do? What if Avalon, the other world, and the rituals of the Druids were ways of understanding mysteries of life, death, and the cosmos that we are only beginning to rediscover today? To truly understand why the legend of King Arthur grew so powerful, we must look even deeper into the myths of the Celts themselves, because Arthur's story is not an isolated miracle. It is the child of a much older tradition. Long before Arthur drew his sword, Celtic heroes were carving their place in myth, and their deeds echo in his legend like distant thunder. Take, for example, the tale of Cuchulainn, the warrior of Ulster. As a boy, he was said to have slain a fierce guard dog with his bare hands, and in repayment, he offered to take its place, becoming the Hound of Culann. His life was marked by unearthly strength, berserker fury, and a tragic destiny. When he went to battle, he was said to undergo a riostrad, a terrifying battle frenzy that twisted his body into monstrous shapes, his hair flaring with sparks of fire. He fought entire armies alone, his courage unmatched, but his fate was sealed by prophecy. He would die young, his glory everlasting but his life fleeting. Does this not sound familiar? A chosen warrior, marked by destiny, rising in the darkest hour to defend his people. Cuchulainn is, in many ways, the spiritual ancestor of Arthur's knights, embodiments of courage tempered by tragedy. Then there is Bran the Blessed, a giant of a man and a king of Britain in Welsh myth. He possessed a magical cauldron that could bring the dead back to life, though those revived could never speak again. In one tale, Bran leads his warriors across the sea to Ireland, carrying the cauldron of resurrection. The echoes here are profound. A mystical object granting life beyond death, a hero crossing the sea to fulfill a destiny. These themes reappear in Arthurian myth. Avalon itself, the island of eternal life, feels like a reflection of Bran's voyage, a Celtic vision of a place where death is not the end but a passage to something greater. And what of Finn Mac Cumhaill, the giant warrior poet of Irish legend? Finn gained wisdom by accidentally tasting the salmon of knowledge, a creature said to hold all the secrets of the world. From then on, whenever he needed insight, he would bite his thumb and call upon its power. This idea that wisdom is drawn from mystical sources, hidden in nature, resonates strongly with the figure of Merlin, who often seems less like a man and more like a living conduit of ancient knowledge. The Celts did not separate magic from life. For them, magic was everywhere. In rivers, stones, forests, and creatures. When Arthur pulls Excalibur from the stone, or when the Lady of the Lake rises from the waters to gift him a blade, these moments are not inventions of medieval writers. They are continuations of Celtic beliefs that the land itself, infused with spirit, grants power to its chosen protectors. Even the famous Round Table, with its ideal of equality among knights, can be traced to the Celtic tradition of warrior bands, where bonds of brotherhood and loyalty to a chief were stronger than blood ties. These were not kings commanding subjects. They were leaders chosen by warriors who swore to follow them into fire and storm. The Arthurian knights reflect that spirit, reimagined through the lens of chivalry. What makes these myths particularly fascinating is how they crossed oceans and centuries to become embedded in American culture. In the 19th century, when waves of Irish immigrants came to America, they brought their tales of Finn, Cuchulainn, and the Tuatha Dé Danann. At the same time, Romantic writers in Britain were reimagining Arthur as the shining symbol of nobility and destiny. In America, these stories fused together. Arthur became not just a British king, but an archetype of the hero that anyone could admire. Hollywood seized this imagery eagerly. Films and television turned Druids into mysterious sages cloaked in mist, transformed Celtic heroes into larger-than-life warriors, and gave Arthur's legend a universal stage. Even today, in fantasy role-playing games, novels, and movies, you can feel the Celtic heartbeat. The magical sword, the hidden island, the wise mentor, the band of loyal warriors, the hero marked by destiny. They are all echoes of myths that began long before knights rode across medieval battlefields. And perhaps that is why they remain so captivating. The American imagination thrives on mystery, on the idea that somewhere out there lies a truth just beyond reach. Stonehenge becomes a portal. Druids become keepers of cosmic energy. Avalon becomes a paradise that might still exist, hidden in some mist-covered valley. These are not just stories, they are invitations to believe and wonder. But remember, within every legend lies a seed of reality. Archaeologists have uncovered Iron Age hill forts in Ireland and Britain that match the descriptions in the old epics. Ancient cauldrons have been found buried in bogs, their craftsmanship exquisite, their symbolism unmistakable. Even the salmon of knowledge may have a kernel of truth. Salmon were sacred in Celtic culture, seen as creatures of wisdom because of their long journeys and uncanny ability to find their way home. The myths are not lies, they are truths told in the language of dreams. And if Arthur is indeed the once and future king, perhaps that is because every generation in every land needs him. Not as a man of flesh and blood, but as a symbol of hope. A warrior who rises when darkness falls. A leader who binds his people together. A reminder that destiny, however mysterious, always calls. If there is one place where all the threads of Celtic myth, Druidic mystery, and Arthurian legend converge, it is Stonehenge. Rising from the windswept plains of southern England, the Great Stone Circle has become the very symbol of ancient enigma. From the moment its massive silhouette appears on the horizon, it commands both awe and questions. Who built it, why, and what secrets does it still hold? Archaeologists tell us Stonehenge was begun nearly 5,000 years ago, long before the Druids emerged in Celtic society. The builders dragged bluestones from mountains in Wales over 150 miles away, somehow transporting them across rivers and hills without wheels or steel. Later, they erected towering sarsen stones, aligning them with the rising and setting sun at solstices. For centuries, scholars believed Stonehenge was a temple to the sun or the moon, a calendar in stone. Others saw it as a burial ground, a place where ancestors were honored, their spirits woven into the very stones. In recent decades, evidence suggests it was both, a place where astronomy, spirituality, and community merged. But history only explains so much. Legends fill the rest. Medieval chroniclers wrote that Merlin himself conjured Stonehenge. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, the wizard flew the massive stones from Ireland using magic, setting them in place as a monument of mystery. It is said that giants once danced with these stones before they became frozen in time. In folklore, Stonehenge became not just a circle of stone, but a portal, a place where the worlds of gods and men touched, where rituals could bend the natural order, where fate itself could be glimpsed. This is why, in the popular imagination, Stonehenge is inseparable from Druids. Even though historians know the Druids did not build it, the image is too powerful to resist. Robed figures raising their arms at midsummer dawn, chanting as the first rays of the sun blaze through the healed stone. This vision has captured poets, artists, and filmmakers for centuries. To many, it is less about history and more about what Stonehenge represents. The eternal human hunger for meaning in the face of mystery. And then there is Arthur. Some versions of the legend claim that Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, was buried at Stonehenge, and that Arthur himself drew strength from its stones. Others whisper that Stonehenge is a marker, pointing toward Avalon, the hidden isle where Arthur rests waiting to return. In this way, the monument becomes a bridge, not only between the living and the dead, but between myth and history, past and future. In America, far across the ocean, Stonehenge has become almost mythical in itself. People imagine it as a place charged with unseen energy, a hub where ley lines, invisible currents of Earth's power, converge. New Age movements see it as a cosmic clock, a tool left by ancient civilizations, or even visitors from the stars. Movies portray it as a gateway to other dimensions, a key to lost wisdom. And while science strips away some of the mystery, the fascination only grows. Because Stonehenge is not just about what we know, it is about what we do not. In that way, it is the perfect ending to this tale. The Celts gave us stories of warriors and gods who blurred the line between human and divine. The Druids gave us visions of a world alive with spirit, where every tree and river spoke. Arthur gave us the dream of a leader who rises in our darkest hour, his legend refusing to die. And Stonehenge gave us the silence of stone, daring us to wonder. Perhaps that is why these myths, carried across centuries and oceans, still grip us so tightly. They remind us that history is never just facts and dates. It is mystery, imagination, and hope. We may never prove whether Merlin walked among those stones, or whether Arthur lies sleeping in Avalon, or whether the Druids held secret rites beneath the midsummer sky. But maybe that is the point. Myths endure not because they are solved, but because they are unsolved. They are questions carved into the human soul, passed down from one generation to the next. And so when Americans gaze at a picture of Stonehenge or read of Arthur's knights, they are not just consuming old stories. They are participating in a tradition as ancient as firelight storytelling, as timeless as the stars above the stones. They are keeping the flame alive. And if one day, as the sun rises on the solstice, you find yourself standing before Stonehenge, watching light spill through its arches just as it did 5,000 years ago, perhaps you will feel it too. The whisper of Druids, the echo of Arthur, the heartbeat of the Celts, and the eternal mystery of humankind's search for meaning in a world full of shadows and wonder.